You ever just tism so much your brain comes up with a great idea? Yeah, that happened to me, and that's why this exists. I am a D&D nutcase. I have been working on world building for the past, 2 years. 2 years. I'm D&D fanatic. I love D&D. It is a big portion of my current life. And with my current world building I'm doing for my next setting with my homies, I was just so my brain was scouring because I have the attention span of a moldy box of rocks. And because I am from the early 2000s of life, and I am also a undiagnosed kleptomaniac, I have an old collection of very ancient toys that most of us might at least know the name of. That being Skylanders. With my extremely fine-tuned senses of instability within my brain, it actually came up with a good idea. And that is the whole reason I am making this video, because my brain actually had a good idea for once. What was that idea? One that is really good, but it scares me. Because now I feel the need to fulfill the need to do all of them. I am going to make all of the Skylanders as D&D monsters and or races, dependent on what they are, their context, or what best fits them if they do not have a direct parallel. Which is good because 2 of the original 3 take some creative liberty, while one of them is just, you are this now. Deal with it. So, let's talk about that. When I was first coming up with this idea after my brain said do it, I immediately first came to mind alright, let's just start with the original 3. Let's just do the original 3, because that would be the easiest thing to do. Just do the first trio, see how it goes. And Spyro was the first one up. I am aware that he has his own series, he's been around for a much longer time, which adds a lot of complexity, but also means he has a more fleshed out character. Which made it a whole lot worse when I had to do research on purple dragons for D&D and find out they have no solid base of what they are. But the good thing about D&D is you get to bend the rules ever so slightly sometimes, as long as it's justified. So when I was making Spyro, I had to first look at what a purple dragon looked like, because all I knew was they were purple. That was literally it. So when I looked at the big purple scaly boy, realized he looked very small. He was very obviously small dragon. Then you look at purple dragons. They're not Spyro. Spyro is stout. He has a blocky head. He has a large set of horns for his head. And he's very compact. Purple dragons, on the other hand, are noodles. They are 6-limbed noodles. And they live in caves. And they're mean and they're mischievous. Supposedly. So when I was putting it into perspective, when I had the reference between the two, I figured if I'm putting Spyro into D&D, I might as well follow the general shape of a purple dragon from what I could gather references from. I could be completely wrong in my references, as a possibility. We're on the internet after all. But I did want to keep true to his color palette. I didn't just want to make him straight purple and lavender. I wanted to keep his orange, and I think it turned out pretty good. It's recognizable as Spyro if he was elongated, but it can also read as a purple dragon, because supposedly they are long noodles. The horns are bigger than what I saw from most depictions of purple dragons. I know they have longer snouts, not as long as what I drew in most cases. But I do think I did a decent job, since this was the first one I did for this group. I think it was a good starting point for getting some of the ground rules done for this project in general. The next one, I think I did better than how I did it with Spyro. For when I'm making humanoids, I don't really make humanoid. I've drawn creatures that are predominantly lizard-esque, so it doesn't help when I have to actually draw a humanoid, because I have no concept of anatomy very much in terms of drawing. So drawing a humanoid is always going to be harder, especially when I'm making a compact silhouette. But I do think I did a good job. For Gill, I decided... I already had the idea in my mind when this idea was being solidified. There's a race in Dungeons & Dragons referred to as the Kuo-Toa. I believe I'm saying that right. I could be completely butchering that. But they are fish people that live in the deep waters. The deep depths, and they're religious fish. I looked at the monster manual because I have that, and they looked so dopey. I wanted to look at other references and found out that they are in Baldur's Gate. I didn't know that. And they're cool. I like the Baldur's Gate version more than the Monster Manual version. So I took that face as a reference for making Gill. And it definitely shows that that was the main focal point that I worked on. As his body, I think, is a little too small for this design. I think his body's just the slightest bit too tiny in comparison to his head. I think if I shrunk his head, he would have looked a little more in proportion. But overall, I do think I did decently well. When making a character with a gun in a fantasy setting, you have to establish the fact that there are going to be weapons of this kind of caliber in the world, so you have to think of kind of like the setting. And since this is essentially I'm putting Skylanders in D&D, it's already pretty fantasy. You already have the fantastical justifications for these kinds of things. I just wanted to make it look more like an actual harpoon gun. So I did that. It's not the best thing in the world, but I think I did good with trying to show moss that is just grown from how wet, for lack of a better term, he is. Just growing off of his barrel pack and his harpoon gun. Added a bit of texture that I felt did good for the design. Overall, I'm happy with him. And I think he's pretty cool. Pretty good. Now, the favorite of the three. I know I just said I don't draw humanoids. And Gill Grunt being very compact shows that kind of lack. When drawing Trigger Happy into more action-focused pose, I think helped in that regard. Yeah, the drawing isn't completely anatomically correct, but he is a goblin after all. Goblins in D&D are kind of just tiny humans with big noses and large ears. But yeah. I literally just looked at the reference for Trigger Happy and just redrew his gun because it was already a pretty decent design. And just for the sake of goblins in D&D being not all that smart, being more primitive, giving a goblin a pair of golden revolvers is pretty scary in of itself. And I do think that adding the orange from Trigger Happy's design helps to give him more contrast and more to look at. Even though his pose is very much action focused, there is a lot for your eyes to wander around. Having that extra pop of color did definitely help, instead of just making him an orange goblin. The strap around his chest I decided as a justification for revolvers and how fast he shoots within the games. I decided to just make them almost like coin rolls. If you've ever worked retail or anywhere that has a coin dispenser, you know what coin rolls look like. I would imagine his guns are just designed with these shells that are just full of coins, and he just shoots them out before the coin rolls empty, and then he just puts new ones in. Just as translating a ball with ears to a humanoid was a little strange, I decided to lean into the Monster Manual's depiction of goblins for D&D, and just seeing as it is a loincloth and some others cloth wrapped on the body. I feel like just having that aesthetic with a pair of gold revolvers, this already almost war paint-like aesthetic given with the orange hair around his face, makes him looking almost like soldier-esque, which I think does a good job of portraying him as a character. But yeah, that's those three. The original three. I am proud of this set. I definitely would want to continue just recording my progress, as I think doing trios at least twice a week. Do one trio at the beginning of the week, one at the end, in the middle. That way there's time. I feel like that would be good. But yeah, the original three. I originally wanted to do almost like speed paint with story in the background, but I cannot hold up like a storyteller for 15 minutes straight, even though I am as I would say, an amateur dungeon master. Being able to convey a story is kind of important. I just cannot for the life of me keep up with just telling a story for a straight amount of time. Yeah, if you want to come up with reasons for these guys, I know I already have like in the back of my mind a reason behind these characters existing within Dungeons and Dragons. They're pretty cool. Maybe when I get access to shorts, I might just put over the speed paint of the given character along with a recording of the story I had behind them. That might be cool. I don't know. See what happens. If you liked it, that's cool. If you didn't like it, then sorry I couldn't fulfill that for you. Everything, art is subjective, so critiques are welcome. Critiques are welcome. I have my own personal critiques, but I also know that outside feedback is great to hear. So, if anyone watches this and gets enough intrigue in me sharing this process more and more often, give me suggestions. Because I know the next trio I want to do, I think just giving me suggestions for more Skylanders to do in this kind of setting would be great. Because I do plan on doing the whole lot. And that's a lot, and that scares me. But I'm so artistically drawn to this that I feel the need to complete this, because in my mind, this is something I feel like I could really just enjoy doing. So yeah. Leave a like if you want to, you don't have to. If you want to stick around, just hit the funny red button that glows anytime you say what it's called. I'm not gonna do it, because you already know what that button is. Leave a comment for like critiques or suggestions for more Skylanders for me to do as D&D characters. Like even suggestions for other kinds of things you would want to see drawn. I may suck at it, I may not. Who knows? Don't know till you try. I'm gonna leave it off here. Thank you for taking the time out of your day to watch this. Adios.